Hey everyone, this is James with SCW, here to show you the local interface of our brand new Admiral line. This is the interface you're going to see when you connect a HDMI monitor, TV, VGA onto your device. So as you can see here, we have different options of selecting different cameras. And if we go down to corridor, this is one of our brand new features. This allows you to select a certain amount of cameras and display them in a long aspect ratio. So for hallways and everything like that, it's a little easier to see what's going on in your cameras. We also have PTZ controls, so you can zoom in, zoom out, control everything with the PTZs right from the local interface. This camera happens to have zoom and focus, so I'm just going to zoom out, and it is an autofocus camera, so I'll let it do its thing. You also right click here and go down to playback, and let's take a look at playback. Here we are in the playback menu. You can see on the right here where you can select our cameras, and on the bottom here we can see our calendar. We can select a date. And then we also see on the bottom here, we see some numbers going from 0 to 23. That's the timeline there, so that's going to be an entire day of recording. So you can click this button to make that timeline smaller, so it goes all the way down to an hour, so you can more easily pick out the time that you want to play back. And you can click and drag and snap to anywhere you want to play. If you notice the red icons on the grid there, those actually motion detection. So even though this camera is recording constantly, you can still use motion to make it a little easier to find what's going on with your cameras. So we'll start looking at the icons here. You see on the left here we have the start clipping button. If we click that once, that's going to start the clip. And if we click it the second time, that's going to end the clip. And then we can click the save button, and that's going to bring up the file there so you can download that to your flash drive. We also have a snapshot button in case you want to get a screenshot. A lock file in case you want to lock the file so it doesn't get overwritten. These two icons here indicate different tagging options, so you can more easily find a piece of playback that you want to go back on in the future. And then we also have digital zoom. So you click that, and then you can draw the area with the little mini grid on the bottom and draw a little thing to digitally zoom, and you can move it around just like this. Looking at the icons here, we have our pause, stop, play backwards, reverse footage, back 30 seconds, and then forward 30 seconds. Then we also have our speed up and speed down. So on the local interface, you can go all the way up to 256 times speed, which is very fast. It allows you to scrub footage very quickly throughout the day. Go back to normal speed here, and you notice when I'm snapping and dragging it over, you get a little preview there of what's going on. That could be really useful in getting a good idea of what's going on during that time. So that about covers playback. Let's jump over into settings and take a look at that. We'll click into menu to get into the full menu, and let's take a look at the backup settings. So the backup menu allows you to select a certain time frame of footage to export without having to go through playback, and that might make it easier to grab a long period of footage. Same thing with image here. If you're recording images, you can also do it there as well with a certain time frame. Under VCA search, we can do searches based on analytics. So I've got one for face detection on a camera, and if I pull that up, it's going to bring up all the different faces detected. And I can play a little video here on the top right of what was going on. So you can also back all these files up to a flash drive that way if you want to as well. And we'll go ahead and we'll exit there and move on to the manual option on the left. So this is going to allow you to manually override the recording schedule. So if you don't want a recording on motion, you want a recording right now, you can do it from here if you wanted to. Under system, this is going to show some of the options you can do for the local interface here. And then if we go down to preview, we can set the different options for which cameras you want where and everything like that, and your different resolution options as well. We go over to time. We can adjust the time as well as adding daylight savings time and different time syncs if you want the cameras to be synced and everything like that. We skip over to user. We're going to see the ability to add users and edit the settings on them. So we can add a user that has different configurations and different permissions. So you can have a user that maybe can't control a PTZ or can view certain cameras and such like that. Let's go over to networking, where we can adjust the networking settings here. This currently is on DHCP, which means it's automatically getting an IP from the router. And then we can also add our DDNS. Check out port mapping for UPnP, email, FTP settings as well. Let's go over to security. We have a couple different security options here. So we have a blacklist and a whitelist. So you can specifically blacklist certain IPs that you don't want trying to connect to the recorder, or you can say only allow certain IPs. So for more advanced users, you can add that setting. So if we jump over to storage here, we're going to see where we can set the schedule for the cameras. So if I want to change this camera to motion, I can go ahead and just click motion and drag my date over. And you see on the top here, we have a pre-record of 10 seconds and post-record of 10 seconds by default on all cameras. If we go down to snapshot, this is also where we can enable the schedule and everything like that. Under hard disk, we can check the free space and the property of the hard drive, as well as format it if we wanted to erase the hard drive. Moving on to disk group here, this is going to allow you to assign certain cameras to certain hard drives. So you can say if you had 2 different hard drives, you could split the cameras between the hard drives, or however you want to do that. Moving on to allocate space, you can add a certain amount of space to a camera. So let's just say you had a camera that was more important, you wanted to give most of that hard drive to that because that was the critical camera. You can say let's give this 300 gigabytes. And then the rest of the cameras that are recording on this hard drive would have to record with that 165 gigabytes. So that would give you a longer time frame on that camera than the other ones. Checking out overwrite here, by default the NVR will overwrite the oldest footage on hand, but if you want to, you can hit stop, and that way it will stop recording once the hard drive fills up. We move over to alarm. This is if you have alarm inputs or outputs on your NVR or your cameras. Under motion detection, this is where we can set the motion parameters. So you can see we have a grid here. Anywhere where there's a grid, it will detect motion. Anywhere where there's no grid, it will ignore motion. So you can see motion being detected on the left there. And then we also have the sensitivity. So the higher the number, the more likely it is to detect motion, and the lower the number, the less likely it is. Under trigger actions, we can see what we can do with the motion settings. So we can make a buzzer go off. We can make it send an email. That's set up. And then we can also have a pop-up window, which means that that camera will pop up full screen on the NVR when it detects motion. So that's only on the local interface. Moving on to tampering, this is where we can set the parameters if somebody is putting their hand in front of the camera, trying to block the camera's view, and it's similar there. We can add the buzzer, send an email, pop-up window, or alarm output, and that also has a sensitivity and everything just like motion. Under video loss, similar things. We can set that based on if a camera disconnects and sends email, etc. Under VCA, this is where all of our analytic-based functions there. So you can see we can set face detection, the sensitivity, and then we also have the trigger actions, which allow you to set the different email, buzzer, just like motion. Under here we have intrusion detection, cross-line detection, audio detection, people counting, defocus detection, and scene change. We have a full guide on our website in order to set this up, so if you have any questions, take a look at that or give us a call. Under alert, this is the ability to alert for different critical settings. So for example, dis abnormal, if something's wrong with the hard drive, it can send you an email, it can make a buzzer noise, or pop up as well. Moving on to the buzzer, this is where you can set different times and durations for that buzzer if you wanted to. The buzzer is a small little speaker within the motherboard of the NVR, so it can alert you audibly if something is going wrong or if you want to for different cameras. Moving on to camera, if you look at the settings here, we can see we can change the cameras from plug and play over to manual if you wanted to. You can see all the networking information if you wanted to as well. Looking at encoding here, this is where we can change over our different video quality settings such as resolution, frames per second, maximum bitrate, as well as whether it's using H.264 or H.265, and you can do that for both the mainstream and the substream for this setting. Going over to snapshot, that's the same for the snapshot. Under OSD, we're going to see where we can name the cameras. You can also move around the timestamp and the camera name if you want to, just by clicking and dragging them. Make sure you hit apply after. And we'll skip over down to image, and we'll see brightness, saturation, contrast, sharpness here. We can adjust this. This can get you a less or more bright image, or a more contrasty or less contrasty image. Going over to exposure, we can adjust the exposure settings to manually adjust the shutter speed. We also have a couple of different presets there as well for shutter speed. You want to adjust just a compensation, so you can generally say, hey, make this image a little less bright, or you can go and say, hey, make this image brighter. It will actually adjust the shutter speed of that camera as well. We go down to WDR. This is where we can turn on or off WDR and adjust the level of it. We move over to white balance. We'll be able to see the different white balance options, including fine tune, where you can specifically change the red and blue offsets. And then of course auto, which it is by default. And then we also have defogging here, which is great for outdoor cameras or long range cameras such as PTZs that are in areas that are looking at a lot of kind of fog or haze and stuff like that. Looking at privacy mask here, this is just basically an area where you black out the area. This keeps it away from both live view and playback in case you want to hide something, for example a computer screen or something like that you didn't want on the footage. We also have some pre-CZ controls here for setting presets and everything like we showed on the live view, and you control everything from here. We go over to maintenance. We'll see system info. This goes over how long the recorder's been operating. Camera statuses, recording statuses. Under network info, we can see the current bandwidth being used on the recorder in the form of cameras, and then how much bandwidth is being sent out. The receiving rate is the cameras that are plugged into the recorder, and the transmitting rate is the cameras that are being remotely viewed. Under net detect, we have some networking tools. Network will display some networking info. Under PoE, we can see the power use and the remaining power on this recorder. And then network statistics will also go over the different bandwidth bottlenecks as well. Under log, we can see all the different functions of the system going on at the time, including different alarms, and we can see if it's an alarm like a face detection, we can bring up the preview as well. Under backup, we can save the different settings and everything of the recorder. Under restore, we can default the system or completely factory reset it. Auto function allows you to automatically restart the system at a certain time if you wanted to. Under upgrade, we can check the status of the firmware by using the cloud function built into the Admiral line. And then if we go down to HDD, we can check the smart test and make sure everything's healthy with the hard drive, and then also do a bad sector detection to make sure that all the sectors with the hard drive are good as well. Under shutdown, we can log out, restart, and shut down, and that will basically cover the settings menu. If you have any questions about anything, just give us a call at 866-414-2553, and we'll be glad to help. Thank you.